The tools that are being built today, it's actually numbing the models themselves. Prompt engineering is telling them like, oh, you have to behave this certain way. Then it kind of kills the personalization.
You come from a very small town in the south of Brazil. How did that shape you?
Even my mother, this was before I even left my hometown. She was afraid that I would never be happy. But I remember like when I came to the Silicon Valley, it felt like home.
What was the actually hard parts of building personalization at Instagram?
Just show the things that people like the most. And follow that trend that has a very short half-life, like giving people candy for lunch or dinner. Try to do that every day and you're like, oh my God, this is disgusting.
When you look at AI products today, what lessons from that time at Instagram translate?
We are not running out of brain capacity. Forgetting is important. Design your architecture in a way that you preserve like what is the most important part of that context.
Rodrigo Schmidt is the co-founder of Vetto AI, a startup rethinking how data improves frontier AI models. Before that, he built the systems that personalizes Instagram for 2 billion users. But he didn't start in Silicon Valley. Rodrigo is from a small town in southern Brazil, earned a PhD in Switzerland, and became one of Facebook's first international hires. Today, we talk about why more data is making AI products worse, and why he thinks every startup building with AI needs research in-house. Rodrigo, let's start a bit with the origin, because there's a parallel universe where you didn't join Meta, where you didn't work on Instagram and made all the big things you did there. I hear you wanted to actually be a biologist.
I've been on technology for basically all my life. Like I started in computer science in high school. I did technical high school, so I was 14 or so when I like found computer science.
Okay.
And also like to keep in mind that I'm kind of old, so I was born in a world that was not as digital as the world we have like today. So computers were not like something so like widespread,
popular,
so popular. I think like having a personal computer was not something that everybody had. So it's like more of a hobby that a few had. There was obviously
pretty expensive, right?
Yeah, pretty expensive. There were smaller computers, right? Like the Apple II, that the Mac came in the 80s as well. But again, I was born in Brazil. For like Brazilians, that was not something that like people generally had in their households, other than just for fun or for like playing like little games here and there. So then as a child, I always enjoyed science. I liked math, and the thing that I was most attracted to was actually, as you said, like biology. And I enjoyed the idea of like how like complex biological systems kind of like work or interact. It's kind of like an engineering like way of like thinking into things, and then
systems.
It's like systems. Yeah, I think like that's probably the reason why I was like driven to that, because it's kind of nature's programming is biology. Like the DNA is kind of like your personal code. Is like how you actually like work, and then how you interact with your environment. Like a lot of that is defined there. And your brain is kind of like your memory, or like your neural network of like behaviors, more like in a more stochastic kind of algorithm. So if you think about that, like biology is like nature's like natural evolutionary coding, or a way of building systems. But then in the funny thing that happened to me was in my hometown, when you like in terms of like high school options that you had, the strongest school there happened to be a technical school. And then on my way of like getting the best education I could to go to university and so on, I was like, okay, I feel like I have to go there, and I have to choose. And there were only 3 courses to choose from. Is electricity, computer science, and the other one was refrigeration. So I went to computer science, and man, like that was when it really changed. Like now it's much better than biology, because like biology, you study that from the outside, you can't really
do anything.
Code. You don't build new systems, right? But then you get there, it's like, oh wait, like I can actually.
Oh, we're getting there, right? As well today.
But yeah, before
you were too early.
Yeah, before that, like I think like that's what kind of like matches it with technology in a way.
You were describing the city where you come, and I guess the interesting thing is most people that one gets to meet in San Francisco, usually that are immigrants or international people, usually come from the big cities, right? The Sao Paulo, the Paris, the London. You come from a very small town in the south of Brazil, which you were describing is a port town, right? It has a big fishing industry. I'm curious, how did that shape you?
It did in many ways. So it's not only like it's a very isolated place, right? Like Brazil is perceived as this big tropical country, and it's shaped like a cone. Right, and the top of like this cone, where most of the land and the forest and like the bigger towns are, is like tropical weather, like very uniform and so on. Like the very tip, I come from the very tip at the bottom of that cone. There's very few other things in the whole country that look like the place I come from. So it's very cold during the winter. The weather
doesn't sound like Brazil.
Doesn't sound like Brazil at all. It's extremely cold. So it's not a super developed place either. And my family was also like very poor. And so you're asking like how did that shape me? Well, you're born in like a situation like that. You look forward. You have to think about like, do I want to, like, is this
Stay
okay?
Here.
Yeah. Is this okay? Am I happy with this? Which is totally fine. I feel like happiness comes from more of like your internal like state than anything. And if you're happy with that, then that's okay. Like my whole family is mostly like there, and they're happy with that. But me personally, like I was not, and then it starts shaping you from the beginning. It's like, okay, if I'm not happy here, like what can I do? You can either like live a sad life of like being in a place that you don't feel like you belong, or you can like do something about it. I didn't mention about that before, but not only being from a very poor family, like my family situation was very dysfunctional too. My parents, they were not together. My dad was not like present. The interesting thing that happened in my early childhood was that I was lucky enough, I would say, that my aunts, my uncles, they managed to raise out of poverty themselves. My mom was the one who stayed in poverty out of like 6 siblings. My mom was the one who actually stayed in more extreme like poverty. If you're unhappy with something, what is it that is on your control that you can do to change it? And like having this intrinsic, I would say, feeling that the reality that you have, you're not like permanently attached to it. That there are ways that sometimes are like in your control. They might be hard, but there are ways that you can get out of it, that you can work your way out of it. So that I would say was the most basic thing that experience in my hometown. And then it started like once you have that seed inside of you, it's like, okay, I can really change things and I can do better, I can be different. Then it's easy to generalize that to other things. So like you start asking like, why do I have to why do I have to stay in this hometown? Like, why do I have to settle for a job here? Why do I have to settle for like this or that environment or state? And if not, then what can I do to change it? What is in my control? Because if there's something like if you're born like poor in like a very small town, like secluded and separated from like the rest. Like if you just like sit in your ass and complain about it, it's not gonna change. But if you learn to question like the situation and do something about it, it becomes like a well-developed muscle that you can use for many things in your life.
I'm sure in that moment when you were living through that as a kid, it was not easy. Right.
I think it was Nietzsche who said, "What doesn't destroy you makes you stronger." So I think there's some truth to that. You have to be careful not to get destroyed along the way, because some things can be pretty like traumatic.
Let's move a bit forward to your time at Meta, but still on the personal side. And I want to wrap up with this. Julio from Atlántico told me that you took the role of being a parent so seriously that your daughter would call you mom as well.
That's true. Yeah. I'm very proud of that.
But at the same time, that happened during your time, the last part of your time at Meta.
It was towards the last years, yes.
And in mine, that didn't happen by accident. It was like we live in this city, which we were talking before. It's like ultra competitive, right? People have very high standards. People are paranoid, as we were saying. So even if, like, I'm sure ambitious people don't intentionally think, oh, I don't want to take care of my family, or I don't want to put the time on it. But it very easily slips away in the environment we live in. People are starting companies, joining very ambitious projects. So I'm curious, how was that for you? Did you have to fight against anything to be able to be that type of father?
By the time she was born, I was more mature, I would say, like state of mind on many things. As we were talking, like we live in an area, like not just San Francisco, but like the whole San Francisco Bay Area, the Silicon Valley, where there's like this internal culture about like priorities and the sense of like urgency and paranoia and going after like your goals and like fight your enemies and so on. And I think that's very positive. I actually like enjoy like so much moving here from like after having like lived in Brazil. There was one point, even my mother at one point, like we had a conversation, and she was telling me how she thought that I had this thing in me. This was before I even left my hometown. I was still like there. And she was telling me,
she foresaw that you were gonna leave.
No, what she said at the time was like she was afraid that I would never be happy because I had this sense of like being constantly frustrated with like things around me. But I remember like when I came to the Silicon Valley, it felt like home. So I guess like this is the place I felt like I was supposed to be. I had a great time here. So I was like, by the time my daughter was born, I was here for again like 11 plus years. I had like a good career. I had been paranoid. I built like multiple like products. I was super lucky to be at Facebook in the early days, way before the IPO. So I saw like the whole growth from Facebook. When I joined Facebook, for you to have an idea, when Facebook was smaller still than MySpace. We were talking like before about like learning how to balance your grit with your what I called like laziness, right? Like your like laziness, not in the sense of not wanting to work, but being smart about the work that you do, like focusing, like, there's this Pareto principle, right? Like 80% of the result comes from like 20% of the effort. So knowing how to play with that, not meaning that you're going to stop at like 80% and not do nothing, but like there is a certain set of priorities that if you play with that well, you maximize
it's hard and smart
output.
Work, right? Not just pure hard work.
Exactly. Not just like hard work, but like smart work. And by the time, I think like by the time my daughter was born, I feel like I had already settled on that. I knew how to work smart. I knew how to prioritize things. So then I was able to balance that like really well, I guess. To be like present, and I had it very clear in my mind by then. What I mean, we can take a more philosophical direction here, talk about like the meaning of life if you want. But I think by then I had already come to the conclusion, at least for me, that the best life is a life of like a more balance, right? Like not 100% work. A more purposeful life, like what your purpose is beyond just one thing, beyond just like the work that you do. Your personality, like your identity, doesn't come from a single thing. It's not just the work that you do. It's actually a trap if you live like that. If you put like all your sense of identity into one thing. And like one day, nothing lasts forever. Like one day you're going to be too old to run that company. One day you're going to be too old to, like be a gym rat. One day you're going to be too old to do something. It's like you
must screw your knee and you can play soccer.
Exactly. It's like you can't. Like I think like you're setting yourself up for failure if you have like your life in that fragile type of like state. And I had already a very good sense of that type of balance when my daughter was born, and to me it was relatively easy. I don't think it reduced the amount of intensity that I put at work. I was still a high profile exec at Facebook, and I don't think my org was compromised. I got like a couple more promotions after she was born. I think I was still like fine on that regard. But I think by then I was already like, I had this deep feeling in my head that my daughter was a very important pillar of my life. Yeah. And the more important than anything is like her months as a baby were very limited. And much more limited than any time. They would never come back. Yeah. So that's much more limited than any time, any project, anything else. So the time that I could spend with her, to me, was priceless. And I gave everything on that one. I didn't compromise. And then her first word was mom. And because like we alternate, my wife and I, she's a smart. It's like, as we were talking about, like a smart kid, like lazy smart. She's like, well, if I can use one word for two people and it works, like I don't care. So she would just call both of us mom. And I never complained. Actually, I enjoyed it. I took that as a badge of honor.
It's a compliment.
Yeah, it's a compliment.
Most dads don't get it.
I gotta say, she's 6 now. To this day, she's still sometimes, she's like, Mom, Dad, like, can you do this for me? And every time that still happens, I'm like, oh my God, I'm still there, still got it. I'm still mom, mom number 2.
That's so funny. Rodrigo, let's change gears. Let's now talk more about work.
Yeah, sounds good.
And business and AI. And one reason that I was excited to talk to you is personalization is becoming like much higher stakes today because of AI. Like I feel like a lot of the discussion around the tooling infrastructure around AI or to build AI applications that create value in the work are actually around personalization. Yeah. Right? Whether it's for people, for work, for teams, like context engineering, all these things people are talking about these days basically are a form of personalization. And in the end, like, I mean, I'm sure you've had that experience where you have this agent that understands you and it feels like magic, and then they suddenly mention something that you said, like, 3 months ago, just passing by, wasn't an important idea, and then you bring it up and it's like, oh no, why are you talking about this? Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? And it just makes it very annoying experience. And during your time at Instagram particularly, you helped build one of the most, if not the most important personalization machine in the world. So I'm curious to first start talking about that experience first. When people think about personalization, I think especially because as we are users of a platform like Instagram, you imagine the feed, right? And it just sounds, oh yeah, they're maybe, like connecting using some data to show me photos of my friends, of people that I care about. And it can sound very simple, right? Yep. But I'm sure there's like a lot of things we're not seeing. So I'm curious, like, what was the actually hard parts of building personalization at Instagram at that scale? What are things that people might underestimate of doing that?
So the part that is, I think Kevin, Kevin and Mike, like the two co-founders, they've talked about that in podcasts and stuff. But they were so skeptical of personalization actually that at Instagram that maybe I think, like, anecdotally I could say, well, the biggest challenge was actually to convince them that personalization was not like harmful. It took years to do that. It was very iterative like process to do it. Let's use something different. Like, instead of like saying that was the biggest challenge, like let's go from the beginning, and because I think that's part of the answer. Like, why were they so skeptical of personalization? It's exactly because of what you said. They didn't want it to feel like personalization is taking over the agency of the user, the way users were already starting to feel about Facebook. So Facebook at that time, this was 2013, 14, this was when people were growing more skeptical of like Facebook ranking algorithms, and like, oh, who is actually in control? It's not me. Like, why is Facebook showing me these things? And
this person that I don't know,
like
right?
this person that I don't know. Like, what is the recommendation? Like, people were growing skeptical of that. I was like, oh, the like Facebook algorithm is trying to like sell me this, or like trying to manipulate me in some way, which is actually like none of that was true. But because there was no transparency, like it makes it easy for people to make those statements, and you don't have like much to prove, right? Like, because like the algorithm is doing its own thing, and people didn't understand back then like as much as they understand today about like relevance and like personalization and customization. So like those. Now we take a lot of those things for granted and we miss them when they are not there. But back then, like it was an age of like, it's like the new thing that is gonna, like kill you. So they had that fear. Okay, like how do we build that personalization in a way that doesn't damage, like the trust, the experience that the users have on Instagram? Because part of that trust is what was driving more users. The Instagram growth and more new users to Instagram than even like Facebook. Instagram's growth at that time was much like faster than Facebook's. Facebook was already much bigger, so it's harder to like keep like there's just so many people in the world. But that was valid. Like, and I think like the biggest challenge then becomes, okay, like how do you solve that problem? If you want to keep the trust, and you want to like, how do you actually? So, and we knew we had to solve that problem. Because if we don't do anything, if you just keep like Instagram the way it was originally with curated recommendations for accounts for you to follow or a time-ranked feed, it's a very gameable, it's such a simple algorithm that is very gameable. If you are a celebrity, they were already doing that.
Posting all day, right?
You post the whole day, right? Like if you're a celebrity, at that time, like it was Justin Bieber and Kim Kardashian, I think the top accounts or whatever. So if you have an account with like millions of people following you, and your feed is time ranked, and you already have an entourage and employees working for you because your name is a brand, like the simplest thing for you to do is just like, flood the system like with pictures every 5 minutes, and you're going to be top of feed for everybody, basically everybody. Whenever they come to the platform, they're going to see a picture of you, and you reinforce your brand. So you can't allow that. That abuse was already happening. So it like the biggest challenge for us, like, okay, like what is the best algorithm? And I think the key for us is the long-term objective function that you want to optimize for. It's not like I know you said like a simple way to think about it is just show the things that people like the most, and follow that trend, and it's going to be okay. Like that has a very short half-life if you do something like that. It's like giving like people candy for lunch or dinner. You might find it wonderful one time. It's like breakfast for lunch, or like oh yeah, this is great. The first time you do it, it's like it's amazing. Try to do that every day, and you're like, oh my god, this is disgusting. I can't do that for life. So you have to find like a long-term objective function that you want to optimize for that maximize like value, purpose. So like you have to start thinking about like the long-term benefit of like your user base. What is it gonna make them happier long-term? Because that's the richest form of engagement that you have. If I can increase the chance that you will continue to use the platform,
long-term retention, not
5 years from now,
not just next
even if that means like you're gonna use it for fewer hours today, if you can align those things, short-term with long-term engagement, that's great. That's not like always aligned. Much to the contrary, like if you, with any obsession, if you take too much of it, it's going to be harmful. So how do you control that? How do you add like the vegetables to that meal? So we spent like a lot of time iterating on that. These were the days of machine learning, like AI as we like know today. So we spent a lot of time iterating on the algorithms that we were using and the objective functions that we wanted to optimize for that would maximize that long-term engagement, and finding that, like cracking that nut, was really hard, because you can't ask people directly what is it that they want. And even if you try, you feel like you know. It's that, like they say, Harry Ford, I think, was the one who's like people are asking like, why why you don't ask like people
they would ask
like
for faster horses. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, if I asked people what they wanted, they would tell me faster horses, and I would have never built the mass production cars that he built. It's this kind of the same thing. Like if we back at that time, like if we ask people, and we did studies like asking people what they want, they would say, oh, I want more like educational material, and I want more like this or that, and then they don't use it because you make a very boring. It's wishful thinking. Yeah. It's like you're asking people, and then they're using. It's the difference between system 1 and system 2, right? You're asking their system 2, like the philosopher in their head, what is it that you want, and they're gonna say that like the top, like most. Utopian thing that, oh yeah, I really want more chess content in my feed.
You're asking the angel, not the devil, right?
Exactly. But I think the best thing, the best solution has to be a balance of the two. Yep. Because you kind of have to have some, present happiness. Yep. To give you some strength to get your long-term goals. So you have to align some of that, yep. Especially on an engagement product, and mastering it without that direct feedback, because you couldn't ask people, and without like any other direct signal in that direction, knowing that the easiest, simplest signals you could use would be harmful. Like how do you, and then you have to engineer your solution. So in the end, what we had to do is multiple objective functions, yep. Test them for like long periods of time, and see which ones would actually like maximize the type of engagement, the positive type of engagement that we wanted down the road. And then you start like iterating on that, and you keep doing it. To this day, I think like that's how those systems, like thankfully these days, the systems are much better that you can automate a lot of that work. Yep. Back in that day, we actually had to do a lot of manual labor on like setting the types of, because the models were not as dynamic as they are today. Yeah. We had to do a lot of like manual like setup and manual tests, yeah. and manual.
I was hearing to a podcast where they were sharing this stat that Andrej Karpathy, when he was at Tesla, when he was building the autonomous car for the first version, 25% of his time was manual labeling of data of Andrej Karpathy, right? Yeah. This connects super well to what you've been doing for the last year, working with Vetto, the company. And I bring that because I feel like there's a lot of like things that translate from your experience at Instagram, now your experience with Vetto, to what founders are you building today with AI. And a lot of the conversation in AI today is around context engineering, like what information an agent should see, how does it synthesize it, what should it remember, what should it ignore, etc. What should it recall, right, depending on what the user asks. Startups are working on this, like any startup building agency is doing. The labs are also working on it very, very actively. Basically, you spent, as you were telling us, a lot of time working on this at Instagram. I'm curious, when you look at AI products today, what lessons from that time at Instagram translate?
What lessons translate to the world of today? That's a great segue, actually, like because I think the most translatable thing is that sense that the simplest, easiest solution is not good enough. I think that's translatable. You have to, because that was true back then, is still true today. If you just give people, it's something that the labs are struggling in a way, and they are improving in the model like little by little. But if you just want to maximize the short-term engagement, you tell the user what they want to hear. You just validate whatever they say, whether it's correct or not. Just agree with them. And that,
which happens a lot, right?
Which happens a lot. It's still like the models still have
they feel very sycophantic.
They still have a sycophantic personality. Most of them, it's hidden. Like more and more, like they're trying. Yeah. We are building tools to help fix that, and we are adding layers to the model to make it better, to avoid like some of that sycophancy. But you can't remove it, because you have to tread that line of engagement with the user. Like those problems of personalization they are the hardest. How do you identify the final purpose of the user, the final motivation of the user, the final goal that they have, and how do you identify that? Because you can't ask them. Because they don't know. They need a car. They don't know they need a car. You don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
So you actually have to, from other signals, identify that, and then start building that relationship in that direction, without fully compromising it.
Yep.
Back to the example. Eventually, even when people said when I said, if you ask people and they would say oh, I want these masterclass material on my Instagram, and if you put it there immediately, they would hate it. But I think there's a part of them that wanted to be more educated, more polite, more evolved. But you have to kind of satisfy some other immediate needs.
Yep.
On your way of that. So then the model needs to learn that. They need to identify the long-term goal, the long-term motivation, the long-term purpose of the user, and then start taking the user from where they are today to that particular point. And the model needs to adapt and customize and personalize. I mean, everybody has been playing with all those tools. The ones that I hate the most, to the point, as you are pointing out, I get frustrated the most, are the ones that don't personalize to that. They have that boilerplate kind of, as you said, this, then I'm gonna do that. It's that's not how that's not the partnership that I'm looking for.
Yep.
I know you can be more customized to my taste, and the models are getting there. If you talk to the most recent models from the top labs today, they're getting there. But the tools that are being built today, the prompt engineering that is being built on top of, it's actually numbing the models themselves. The models cannot be as powerful because the prompt engineering is telling them oh, you have to behave this certain way, you have to do that. And that recipe, if it's too general, then it kind of kills the personalization. So every application that is being built has to take that into account, and they have to think about that objective
It's
function.
the model is fighting against the application in a sense.
Kind of. The application is filtering the power of the model. I think, if you do that way, the prompt engineering has the power to filter the interface, and that's what matters in the end. Is the interface between the system and the user.
Yep.
If you are capping that interface and limiting it in some way, it doesn't matter. You might have a Ferrari engine on your car, but if you if the rest doesn't follow, then you won't be able to use the full potential of that engine. What matters is the whole car.
Yep.
So as you are building an application using AI models, you have to take that into account and make sure that you're using the full potential of the model underneath, which are getting very good. They have that ability to adapt to the user. It's getting there. It's not perfect yet, but it's getting there. And
a lot of those limitations or guardrails around the models were built exactly because they didn't have them initially, right?
True. Yeah.
And something else that I've been discussing with a lot of founders, and also in my own experience building agents, is I feel maybe a year and a half ago, a lot of the conversation was around the context window.
Yeah.
Right? And the labs companies were, Google and Gemini, and then Anthropic launched the 1 million token window, whatever. But it got to a point where actually more context doesn't solve the problem, right? And I'm sure you've had your own experience when, as a user, you see, I now have more context window, and it's still 20-30% of the context window. It starts feeling like it's drifting apart. And I also think when you add companies, organizations, or teams, at some, that's going to become even worse, right? So I'm curious, how did you, from your time at Instagram, or what did you learn there around this tension between just having more data about a user and actually understanding what is useful from that data?
My general sense, I mean, except for some weird cases where, for example, if your data is wrong or something like that, but I would generalize. Every generalization is kind of has its limitations, right? What is the problem then if you if sometimes you have more context windows, more tools, and now the systems are misbehaving? is maybe like what you're doing with that like extra data at the application, like how you're applying like that data matters a lot. If you start overfeeding to the data that you have, more data is not the problem that you are like describing of the model, like not like it's not the extra, is the fact that now you have more window and you're not,
You know where to put your attention.
exactly. Like you have more data and you're like it's not even overfitting, but it's like you're not prioritizing it the way that it
Knowing
should.
what's important.
So your architecture is probably like broken in some way. There are ways to build systems that will make it like better. It reminds of like I was talking to a friend a couple of weeks ago. Like I'm very interested in memory like architectures nowadays. I think it's a very important problem that the models and applications will have to like to dedicate more time to. There is this condition. I think like it's very rare. Like very few people have that. They have perfectly accurate memory about themselves, like personal situations. I don't know if you heard about that. Like there are some people, I think it's like maybe like 100 people in the world or something that out of like 10 billion.
You're trying to describe like photographic memory and stuff like that?
It's kind of like that, but it's yes, it's.
And I do have those friends that you remember.
So it's very very rare. Like very few people have it. Like like this particular like condition. In which they can't forget like situations or like things they have. It's very personal though. Like they only retain the memories that like about themselves, but they fully retain all those memories. Like any experience that they had in their lives, it's there. They can't forget, and it's considered a condition because it's kind of debilitating. It makes it very hard for you to like prioritize. It makes hard for you to overcome like traumas. Wow. Or like difficulties. Forgetting is important. Like it's how we actually like we could. What that tells me as well is like we are not running out of brain capacity. If like there are some people that can retain all the experiences they had in a lifetime, then our brain doesn't have a capacity limitation, right? Like so then why the hell did we evolve to forget things? Like why did we not evolve to remember more and more? I personally have a terrible memory. I forget like a lot, and it's a blessing in a way because like I've.
And we complain so much about that, right?
I don't remember. Like there's like sometimes like my wife and we are talking about situations we had and like, oh, remember that time we had that like long discussion about this? I was like, nope, don't remember, which is good. Like then I don't need to retain it. Like So it's important like to build like design your architecture in a way that you preserve like what is the most important part of that context. So it's not really the same thing as overfitting. Like I think I was thinking before originally when you asked the question more in terms like, okay, how do I train the model with that data? But that doesn't apply to the problem you're saying. The problem you're saying is like, oh, I have more context window. And now like that bigger context window is damaging the answer. And that's not an overfitting, that's not a training problem, it's a memory hierarchy problem. It's the same principle, like why are transformers a better architecture is because they realize, oh my God, like attention is all you need in a way. It's like you just need to find like what are the important tokens in this string that I need to like retain that will give me the strongest signal to the like to predict the next token. So it's the same thing. Like you have like a big like context window. Now, how do you use that wisely? And because that's at the application like level. If you feed the entire like a context window raw to the model, there's limitations. Like of course it's running on transformers. It's gonna try to identify attention, but it doesn't have the application layer context on the importance of the different parts of that window to the user. You at the application layer are the one you are the one who knows what is important out of that context window. If you take that as it is and like throw that into the model, then the model is gonna give you the best answer you can come up with. But now you are at the application level. You have to do your job in setting up the right, giving the right tools to the model to prioritize the parts of the context that it has to pay more attention to.
Yep.
And sometimes you might have to forget things. And that's why I was saying, like, it's important. I think there's a reason we don't have like 80 billion people that can retain all the experience they had in their lives.
Something else that I wanted to touch on, and I think it connects what we're discussing with your experience at Meta, at Instagram, but also with now what you're doing with Vetto, is that, I feel like in the past, research teams were usually something that only big companies would invest in.
Yeah.
The Metas, the Googles, now the big labs, OpenAI, Anthropic. But lately, I feel like more of the application layer startups, or even just earlier startups in general, at the Series A, Series B, Series C, are starting to build some shape or form of a research team.
Yep.
And it feels like I think about the Runway, Crea, a couple of companies are doing really well, at least on the video image space. And they're having like a lot of success doing that. I mean, well, Cursor, so it's a big company, it's also doing that themselves. So it feels like the moment where companies start becoming a research organization is coming much earlier than it used to be. Do you think, is that something you're seeing? Does that make sense to you? Is it like becoming a new default, or is it maybe just part of the moment we're in?
The obvious answer is that we are, building the road at the same time we're kind of like driving the car and building the products. This technology is so powerful, and it adds like so much value right away in being able to, make people more productive in their tasks. We can't wait for the research to be fully done to start using and deploying products, right? Like people are taking value. This is so disruptive. Like people are getting value out of it. Even as a prototype.
Yeah.
And like some of the thing, like ChatGPT, I think like from the beginning was, or even like the GPT versions prior to that, they were being released as kind of like test products.
Yep.
Like, oh, here's like a new like test, like a toy thing. And then ChatGPT, if I'm not mistaken, was like an internal, hackathon or like internship project or something along those lines. That they thought, oh, this is really cool. Let's ship it and see what people think. And then people loved it and started to get like a lot of productivity out of it. And you cannot unship something that adds value to society. Yeah. Like you just have to move forward. So it's part of that is it's obviously like part of the moment. Like you're exploring the space, and you are getting results directly out of that exploration. Mm-hmm. So we don't have time to explore the space, set the foundation, build the products. Okay, now it's like we're all going in on this together, and we're gonna figure out like along the way where the problems are. Like we're gonna throw a bunch of stuff on the wall. What sticks. What doesn't stick, we move on. Yep. That's part of the moment. And then because the technology is still in research phase, you have an edge if you have research in-house, even if you are an application company. Because you need to do integration for that like research. So, and if you're not a researcher, you're not going to be able to do that best integration. Like for years, like Facebook was very early on AI. We had FAIR, Facebook AI research, that started many years ago. I think it was I don't remember the exact year, but it was definitely more than a decade ago. And it was... I remember 2012, I think, when we started Facebook AI research in New York. Mm-hmm. We were doing that. We were starting I was at Instagram at that time. We were starting a personalization team in New York because we were doing feed ranking and so on. It was under my org. And I remember we were integrating with some things with Facebook AI research at the time. Fast forward a few years, actually, in 2021, 2022, I think is when 2021 when I actually went to I worked on the Facebook AI org. It was not Fair. It was bigger than Fair. It was Facebook AI. And one of the challenges that we had back then was that integration of research into product. And that was interesting because the way we were doing...
There are different cultures in a sense, right?
It was exactly that. That's the point that I actually wanted to bring up because it was born out of Fair. So I'll tell you the whole story. Like we had Fair in the early days, which was doing more research. And I remember when we were doing our like personalization of Instagram and Fair was born, we were like, oh, let's try and like work together. There was limitation on how we could do it because Fair, the way it was set up and structured, it was much more focused on research and publishing papers and so on.
More like an academia.
More academic, for sure. Than product oriented. They were super helpful, like great to work with. I made great friends, but it was more on a kind of a consulting like basis. You go there, you test your ideas with them, you get ideas, they help you, and then you go and you implement, but you have to implement on your own because they're doing the research. By the time, and that evolved over the years, right? Like then there was more need to integrate AI into products, and they started creating a product organization inside of AI. By the time I joined the AI org, they had research in a product like a branch, but it was so hard for that product branch to connect with the product tissue of the rest of Facebook because it was so like separate. I actually spent 1 year looking into that, like the examples that were successful, the examples that were not so successful. The outcome of my internal research at the time was that the projects that succeeded, it was necessary, not guaranteed to be like sufficient, but it was at least like necessary. You had to have it, a deeper integration. It's like you actually had to have researchers working closely to the product. Or kind of like vice versa, one way or the other. But like you had to integrate the two teams in order to...
They couldn't be separate teams. They have to be the same team.
They had to be the same. Like it couldn't work as like an API in the middle. And the problem that we have today is like the labs are doing research and you're building an application. And I'm telling you, the model in which you're trying to treat that like research into product as an API doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Like it's fated to kind of like fail in one way or another. Like either like the research is gonna advance and your API is not gonna catch. You're gonna be playing catch up with that, and it's gonna be hard if you're just doing the product part. Or like your product will kind of like move forward and it will crave something that the model is not going to give you, and you don't really know what it is because you're kind of like moving ahead of what what the research can do. So you have to have a deeper integration. Now we live in a world where but
at the same time, like if I'm Cursor, I don't want to go. I mean, there's like also like this, I guess like competing incentives, right? That might push some application companies to work with the labs and some not as well.
Exactly. But one way or the other, you have to have research inside.
Yeah.
So you have to have research to know what is like where the research is moving.
Yeah.
You have to have a research as a bridge. You have like if you can't be building inside that like big research lab, the best.
So if you can't collaborate with OpenAI or Anthropic, then you have to build it inside. Basically.
You have to build it inside. Like I'm not saying like you have to build your own like foundational model, but you have to have like a research like branch inside that knows how to use that model to its limit and knows where the model is going. You can kind of like predict where the research is going before it happens. And without like a research branch inside, you can't really do that. And that's the part that I think is more like the moment that we are like living today, and in which this research is happening. When it stabilizes, then I don't know for sure. I think like some, let's say at some point, the technology stabilizes, the models get as good as they get. Like, there's no more like academic research that needs to go into the foundational model companies. It becomes more quote unquote like commoditized. Then do you still need like a research? Like I think it will depend so much on the application that you have. Like a company like Vetto, right? Like where we are doing research is core because like we're doing like data research. So we're never going to get rid of like research because like that's our job, is to advance the research of the data that trains like the models and the data that is used to create evals for those models or like reinforcement, like learning environments and those things. So like we're gonna have research like potentially forever unless we like switch our like business model. But I think like a lot of consumer or like B2B applications that are more wrappers on top of existing foundational models, there's going to be a big question mark whether they would need like to have research. And it's very hard to predict that future like today. But I'm saying like it's necessary as we are today. I think it's kind of necessary for those companies to have some level of research because they need to know where the research is going to take the best advantage of it.
I know it's early from your experience at Vetto, but you also experienced this, as you were saying, as at Meta and Instagram. I'm curious, do you have any advice on how to do that? From how you bring people, how you bring researchers, how you, I guess, what type of empowerment, organizational structure do you have to give them? How do you basically instrumentalize that research team at a startup, right? We're not talking about a huge company. We're talking about a company with tens, hundreds of employees, right?
Yeah, for a startup, it's obviously like in some ways it's going to be harder because you're not going to have like a big, like research organization. Like
you're going to pay $100 million like Meta.
And you're not going to have like potentially the cash flow to pay the same salary benefits like stock and so on as some of the big players. But I like my experience also is that that is not the most important thing, especially for people doing research. I mean, I was a researcher, not AI researcher, but I went all the way to having a PhD in my career. And one of the questions that I had to ask myself at the end of my PhD was like, oh, do I continue as an academic or do I move into industry? And it so happened for my own like benefit that I went into like industry, but I went pretty far on in the academic like world, and I gotta say like for people with that kind of like vein of being a researcher and that drive, money and status is not the most important thing.
You wouldn't have become a researcher in the first place, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like if you have that type of material ambition or like ego ambition, there's other careers that you would choose earlier in life. Most likely, I'm not gonna like generalize, but like most likely you wouldn't. I think what drives those people the most is working on interesting like projects, which all like I would say like the challenge is not the money. The challenge is actually like how if you're building. Fortunately, it's not a challenge for Vetto. As I said, like Vetto is a research company. My take on that, I think I've had enough experience on that because like part of my work at Instagram was in building the new like personalization systems was exactly that. Like how do I bring the top talent on at the time, like machine learning and AI when we are building, when we are building Instagram at the time, like Instagram was not known by its like recommendation systems at all because it had zero.
And you had to convince them.
You have to convince people, but you show them the potential. Like that's what I personally do. But you have to have some know-how of how that research is done. That's part that I think, having been a researcher in some way, I kind of know how a researcher like clicks, and you have to appeal to that, but you have to be like genuine.
Yeah.
It has to come from, and I really mean what I meant at the time what I said. Like we were building complete new systems. At the time, we were the first ones to implement sparse models because sparse models were not like used in production that much. Sparse models are models like the ones we have to like the sparse models they have at the time like thousands, millions of features. And you have to optimize the way you kind of use those. They have more features than the usual models that you would use at the time. A lot of the matrix that you create is like filled with zeros. Like it's a special type of like models. And at the time, we finally had some of the technology to like start using those models in production. We were the first ones to do that at Facebook overall. That was very attractive. We had to create new infrastructure. We had to create new even indexing systems internally for the type of content that we had. For people interested in doing, technical research, this is a green field. Like you go there, you get to be the first one. You know, like, you have, you know, like the drivers of like motivation is like mastery, autonomy. What is the other one? The sense of purpose. The purpose people already like come with is the purpose of researchers to do research, and like, but you give them like agency and mastery, like you give them like a green field where they can try new things and learn from that and grow, and you give them like agency so that like now you come in and you explore the space for me. Like it's golden. So that's the part that is a challenge, I would say, for most application companies. If they don't have that research DNA or experience, and they don't know how researchers work or click, it's going to be harder for them because they might use, you know, like the wrong motivator, the wrong carrot to try, and that's not going to resonate with the researcher. It's actually going to push them away. If you tell them, oh, you come here, we're going to be like massive, or you're going to make this much money, or you're going to like this is going to be a great product, or you're going to like innovate like the way people interact with like this particular like problem. It doesn't really resonate with what they want to do, what they want to explore, unless they are deeply, you know, sold on the particular problem that you're trying to solve, their job to be done. Like maybe you're building some type of product that, you know, connects.
Which is harder.
Which is harder. I'm just saying, like if you are trying to maximize your chance of bringing like the best researchers, and you have to connect with them at a like personal like level in a way on their motivation.
Speaking of cultures and motivations, you left Brazil more than 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, 20 years ago. Yeah.
Exactly?
Yeah. No, actually more, like 18 years, so 20, more than 20. So 23 years ago, yes.
You spent time in Europe, right? And then you end up building your career in Silicon Valley. So the interesting thing is like those are three very different cultures.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And today we are, I mean, Vetto is like an example of that, but there's many more companies. We're seeing a lot of international founders coming to the US, to San Francisco, to the Bay Area, to scale their companies globally or start them here. I'm curious, what did you have to unlearn from Brazil or from your time at Europe to succeed in this environment?
Every time you have a cultural like shock like that, there's going to be a change, right? Like it's just, to me, I actually always.
Well, you said it felt like home as well.
Say it again.
You said it felt like home when you first came.
Yeah, but I mentioned that like before, like when I came here, it felt like home, but I still had to adapt. Like no, it felt like this was the place that I really was meant to be when I landed here. But I wasn't fully prepared also to be here in some ways. The main thing that I wanted to bring up with that is actually like you go from one environment to another that is so different. You kind of either, again, back to what we talked in the beginning, it goes through situations like that. Either it destroys you or it makes you stronger. And I know I have many friends who actually moved also from Brazil to Switzerland. And it doesn't work. Like it's like, no, this is too much. Nope, doesn't work for me. Boom. 6 months later, like they're back. They don't even finish the PhD or like the sandwich like PhD. They were like whatever they were doing is like but for me it worked really well. I adapted really well, and I think like once you pass through an adaptation like that, going from Brazil to Switzerland, coming from Switzerland to the Silicon Valley, being a tech person, the adaptation here was piece of cake. I still had to adapt though. So I came here, Facebook was in its infancy, and some of the challenges that I had was like I was coming from a more academic background. I was coming recently out of my PhD. I tried to build my own startup in Switzerland, but it was building a startup in Switzerland. So it's like, is it structured or predictable or like, no, it was the reason I didn't continue there, because like, it's not a great environment for a very dynamic type of system as a startup. And there's one particular set of startups that work really well in Switzerland. Like we could talk some other day about biotech startups in Switzerland. But there is a recipe for that one. It works because there is a recipe. It's like super structured. For consumer tech startups like the one I was building at the time, it's like a messaging like startup, it would never work. And then I could see that. So like coming here, again, I was coming from this very like structured environment, recently out of my like academic like world, originally from Brazil. The challenges that I saw is like here you have a few things that are very different from the rest. I think here the transparency, the candor that is natural to the culture in the Valley is second to none. I think like the idea here is like being polite here is being, transparent and honest about like how you're feeling, and that's polite. Like if you hide things, if you have secrets, like you people are skeptical of you. So if something is not working, you say it's not working. And you don't go around it and say like, it's like you just say it, especially on engineering. And I wasn't fully prepared for that. I really enjoyed it once I got it. I remember my first few months at Facebook, the first feedback that I got was around not taking enough risks. And these were other times. It's not something that I think they would recommend for people joining Facebook or like Meta these days. But when I joined in 2008, my manager told me in the first month or so, we had our one-on-one, and he was telling me like, look, I don't think you're trying hard enough. And I'm like, how come? And he was like, well, you haven't broken the site yet. You haven't, basically what breaking the site means like you haven't put facebook.com down entirely yet.
That was the bar. Wow.
That was the bar. You actually have to bring the whole thing down, and that's proof that you're like, because if you're not doing that, if you're not breaking things, like the motto at the time was move fast and break things.
Yep.
If you're not breaking things, it's not sufficient for success, but it's kind of like necessary for you to break things.
Yep.
So if you're not breaking things, it's evidence that you're not trying hard enough.
Wow.
Sure, somebody that is breaking things left and right, they would be fired. I mean, it's not necessary and sufficient. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. You also have to have quality and so. But the way to show that you're trying hard enough is actually
consequences.
Putting it down, actually breaking it. And that was something that to me was like, oh, really? That's the bar? And I had to adapt to that. It was something that I didn't solve. I mean, that first conversation was a relief. Okay, I know I can try harder now. But you don't change your internal programming like that. It took me a long time.
You also, I guess in most places outside Silicon Valley, you don't get rewarded for that.
No,
right? It's the opposite.
Not in Brazil. Not in Swiss. I was definitely not prepared for that one. It's those were. It's either Brazil is a very warm culture. I think I have this bit of a anecdote that I was watching. You know this show Dancing with the Stars. I think it was Dancing with the Stars.
I think it's been all over the world.
All over the world, right?
We have one in Peru.
It was either the Dancing with the Stars or the singing competition, and that was showing in the Brazil version on TV, and I was watching it, and then it gets to the ratings, and then you get nobody gets a grade that is lower than 9, ever. In Brazil, and everybody's great. It's the feedback is always I was watching it, and that was proof to me that I had been out of Brazil for
for
too long. Because I was watching it, it's how come that was terrible? That was horrible. That is a 2. And there's no, you put so much effort in that. It was, I could tell that you worked really hard. And it's not a kid that you're talking to. That's a grown-up man. You don't need to work around and give them a 9 or a trophy for sucking.
Trying.
So it's a very warm, positive culture. And there's benefits with that, but it's something that doesn't really fly so well over here because you're working around the truth, and that's not efficient. Here, I think the culture is much more about efficiency, especially when you are in this world of startups. It's truth seeking and efficiency. It took me a good few years, but it was the good thing for me I was welcoming that change because I could see like, oh, that's much better actually. And now what you have to do is polish the interface, like polish your outer layers, because I think my inner layers already craves that. So polishing the outer layers is always easier than reprogramming your inner layers. If my inner layers were
against that,
it would not have worked. It just worked because it was, oh, now I have to, like polish these like extra layers that I built from some of those past experiences, and I can be more of myself.
I love it.
And that was the biggest adaptation, I would say. But it was I'm not saying it would work for everybody, but I think for me, it was something that I welcomed the change. Yet it was still the biggest change that I had to go through.
One final question.
Sure.
And it's related to what you talked about, which is that the first feedback you got at Meta was not taking enough risks. If you had to thank one or two people for pushing you to think bigger, who would they be and why?
I think I'm grateful for everybody in different ways, but I'm also very aware that if I had held on to one single person, it might have been more debilitating than helpful. But I think the person that was with me for almost all of that journey was my wife. I think we pushed each other in many different ways, but it's not that we were pushing you have to. We just wanted to explore things together. So we were exploring together, and nobody was. We were supporting each other. We were cheering each other, but we were also discovering the world together, exploring things. So that has been a big journey, I would say, together with her.
Rodrigo, this was amazing. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Enzo. It was a pleasure.
Such a great story to wrap up with.